Hello, welcome everyone. I see some familiar faces and some new folks, so we're gonna have some fun tonight. We have today Tomer and JJ. I know them for some years now through Uprise. If you don't know Uprise is a social innovation pitch competition. I have very fond memories that include JJ and Tomer and other folks as well through that competition, so I highly recommend you check it out. But it's cool to kind of get back together in this format. We're going to talk about pilot testing and prototyping. So before we dive in, I'm going to give Tomer and JJ the opportunity to just do a quick introduction of themselves so they can highlight what they want to highlight. And thank you both for coming. So JJ, how about you start us off? Can you tell us a little about you?
Sure. Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is JJ. I'm the founder and CEO of TalkMeUp. We are an AI-based software company focused on communication training. Very happy to see everyone.
Thank you, Tomer.
Just unmuting myself. Hi, everyone. Really glad to be here. Thanks to Nadili and Ascender for having us as well. I'm Tomer Borenstein. I'm the CTO and co-founder at BlastPoint. We are a customer intelligence AI-driven platform that helps organizations better understand and motivate their customers. Looking forward to the fireside chat.
All right, so we are going to start off with my favorite part. It's the speed round, the very beginning. So the goal of this sort of speed round section at the very top is to get some kind of questions answered from the very beginning without having to go on into long stories. We want to pack as much information and useful information as possible. But we'll start off with establishing what lens both Tomer and JJ are coming from. So first, just to get their context of how they're going to be answering the upcoming questions, we asked them to answer, or I should say, finish the following sentences. So for each of you, we asked, can you answer how many customers or users do you have? We have X amount of customers or users. JJ?
Yeah, we have over 10 enterprise customers, in total over 1,000 and 2,000 end users. Yeah.
Tomer?
Yep, and we've served over 90 customers, but I would consider a few handful of those to be big, active enterprise customers.
All right, and our company is X years old.
3 years old.
5 years old.
There are X full-time employees.
7.
14.
14, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And then our business model is?
B2B.
So we're B2B enterprise. We aim for pure SaaS, but since it's an AI business, there is a service component as well.
All right, so now you know where they're all coming from when you answer. Perspective is important. Everyone's going to answer these questions depending on your type of company. So you know where Tomer and JJ are coming from. All right, so the following are about a lot more finished. This section keeps growing because I just feel it's such an efficient use of time. So here we go. All right, so finish the sentence. We'll start with Tomer this time. The purpose of our prototype is to?
It's to get to a point where you can find out if an idea can make you money by making some money from your idea.
All right, JJ?
Is to validate your value proposition using a simplified visual representation.
Nice. Now, what's the purpose? The purpose of a pilot test is to?
For me, it's to build credibility with a customer and open the door to larger, longer engagement.
Nice.
And for me, I think the purpose for pilot test is to test the product market fit and figure out the future go-to-market strategies.
All right. Now, before launching a new product or service, we go through at least X number of prototypes.
So I put here less than you think, sometimes 0 prototypes. Also define launch.
Okay. Not answering the question that I've asked. Typical. Thank you, Tomer. JJ?
I would say 2. Yeah.
2. All right. So the next one is the very first step in developing a new product or service is? JJ, how about you start?
Customer discovery.
Same answer.
Fabulous. When it comes to pilot testing, are you team hashtag test early, test often, or team hashtag team, sorry, or hashtag team refine, test a few times? So test early, test often, or team refine, test a few times?
We aim for the former, and in reality, it's the spectrum.
Fair.
We are team test early, test often. We actually have a team of QA. So yeah.
All right, nice. A successful pilot test should get feedback from at least X number of users.
That my answer was depends on the goal of your pilot.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the past, how many has it been for you?
Again, we've run multiple pilots with different goals every time, so it can be a few handful to literally hundreds of users.
There we go. Cool. JJ, what about you?
Yeah, I would say at least 2 for each persona. So categories of users, also experts. Yeah.
Tomer agrees. All right, we're in the last one here. We gather user feedback through
sales, customer interviews, and usage data. There are more, but these are the main ones.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say mainly from interviews or meetings. Some surveys if it's large scale. Yeah.
Okay. All right, that wraps up the speed round. We got some quick information from the two of them. You could leave now and leave with some new understanding. You see? Tomer's like, I gotta go too. Wow. So first, let's just talk about prototypes. Tell us a little bit about your prototyping process. Is it on a napkin? Is it on your wall? Is it your hand? Where do you start that process?
Who do you want to start?
Let's make this dynamic.
All right, yes, sure. So again, it depends if I'm prototyping a completely new offering or prototyping, a new feature or an idea. Typically, the first thing that I do is really just look at the value proposition before I get into features and capabilities. What is the value that I want this particular prototype to give to an end user or a customer? And then super low fidelity paper prototypes. There's that graph of how early in the design you catch problems and how expensive it is to fix them, and it's sort of like an inverse correlation. So you want to get in front of users or customers as soon as possible. Really start having those discovery conversations early and share, even paper prototypes with those customers. I know entire companies that were built, even in your building at the Sender, that were literally built off of selling PowerPoint slides, right? And we are a very sales-focused organization. We like to sell first, build later. And so really that's where the prototyping stage or process starts, with really understanding the value proposition, creating some low fidelity mock-ups. Once it's validated, and really the only validation that matters is money. Or if you're not for profit, then some actual usage. Then is when I would go beyond prototype and really start fleshing things out.
You said a really important phrase there, or interesting phrase that not everyone gets to do, and it was sell first, build later. And how do you swing something like that when someone goes, well, how can I buy something or agree to something that I don't even know what's going to look like? How do you swing it?
Well, so we do something that's called value-based selling. We sell the value, and this might not work for every type of business, right? But our sales process rarely includes demos of our software because we're really focused on the value, and then we're able to sort of that's nice because we're able to sell new propositions that we're planning to build soon on our roadmap And if the deal closes like that, we can Wizard of Oz it. I mean, I would never sell something that I don't think I have the ability to deliver on, even if it's manual and Wizard of Oz style. It might not be productized yet, but I'm not going to sell something that I can't deliver on. So yeah, I mean, I could probably talk about this for a long time, but that's the gist of it. Also, our sales cycles are long, so by the time that we close the deal, it's already been validated and has been at least somewhat developed to the point where it's been de-risked.
On average, how long are your sales cycles? How many
Oh
months?
man, short ones are around 6 months. Long ones are 12 plus. I've had 2+ years. We are working on shortening those sales cycles. There are reasons for why they're so long, specifically the industries we're in, and the kind of things that we do require a lot of security and legalese, but we're working on shortening and simplifying the sales process as well.
Okay, great. What about you, JJ? What's your process?
I would definitely echo on what Tomer said, sell the benefits rather than the features. So I would say prototyping, if I look back on my past 3 years from the very beginning, I would see a funnel process. So at the very early days, I would verbally pitch what we envisioned to deliver, and then get feedback to further break down the vision into more specific features, right, to support the delivery of the benefits. So from there, I would say in a very iterative way. So let's say our alpha product, which is basically only a platform that supports the workflow of giving each other feedback on their communication skills. And then beta product, we build a simplified version supporting by our AI engine 1.0, which gives you an overall score on your presentation. And then we get further feedback from our customers saying, oh, this is interesting. We definitely have the needs, but can you tell me more about my communication skills rather than just one score? So from there, we get valid feedback in terms of specific product features. So from there, our 2.0 product, it was a very big upgrade from our previous version. So in that case, we built more than 10 metrics around how we analyze a person's delivery and content. So from there, if you go to our website, that's our 2.0 version. But then, as the sales process goes, we realized that in order for us to successfully, plug into our customers' training ecosystem, we need to build other functionalities that's not even within our core value proposition, right? To support their existing training or workflows. So as you go, I would say there's more and more practical aspects to build a product. Yeah, but at the very, very beginning, I think in my case, we started from the abstract concept. Yeah.
How did you determine that you were ready for that 1.0 launch? Because I'm sure once you launched it, you knew that there were things that still need improvement or it was buggy. How do you just put that baby out there?
Yeah. I mean, we have been talking with customers since day one, even before we had anything. And from there, you will see, oh, who is our champions. And then once you have a new version of the product, you go to talk with them and say, hey, this is what we envision, how we can deliver the benefit. Do you have any specific feedback? Because especially when you're creating something new that didn't exist before, it is really hard for you to get feedback from potential customers, because it is super hard for people to articulate something that's not even there. So for us, we typically have like a lo-fi version and then a hi-fi version. We only show hi-fi version of the product to like actual end users and customers. But we would talk with designers or industry experts with our lo-fi version or even concept level. Yeah, that's what we are doing.
Great. And kind of along those lines, and learning from these versions and feedback, can you give me a big design flaw or user flaw that you discovered through either prototyping or pilot testing? And how did you find it? For the both of you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think the process is slightly different now than at the early time, because at the early time, our priority was to visualize the key value proposition, right? So we would omit a lot of detailed features, but nowadays we would start in an agile management process, which means we're going to start with a user journey from the very end to the last. And then we break it down to, okay, front end design, visual designs, UX, UI, and then we break it down to, technical tasks and AI tasks, and then manage that in the pipeline method. Yeah.
What was the biggest flaw you found?
The flaw in terms of?
When let's say you put it into hands of some users and they're like, oh, JJ, this is not working. Or did you notice this? You misspelled your company name or something. What was a flaw that you found through user testing or through pilot testing?
Bugs are everywhere. They're always there. Like people can't log in, and like at the early days, whenever I do a demo, like I would say 7 out of 10 times there was a bug. But then these days it's way better. Yeah. Nice. But it's always there.
Bugs. It's just part of it. It's part of the game. Would you agree? What's a big flaw you found about BlastPoint?
I'll zoom out in scale and time range, but we're in the process right now of launching our what we call V2. And that's because we meandered a little bit for the first few years trying to find our product market fit and our value proposition. And, the biggest flaw is that A, we were selling to the wrong customers in the wrong industry. And B, we were prioritizing the wrong kind of usage paradigm. So we're still very geospatial data heavy. We've always, our mission has always been, make data and insights accessible and actionable by people who are not data scientists. And none of that has changed, but the maps first paradigm and the industries that we serve we've pivoted there because we've seen this feedback, not just through user testing, but through validation like sales and things like that. So I'm sure I could find some, this box color is not as pleasant to the eye, but this is something that I think is really significant and valuable that, I'm a first-time entrepreneur and it's going pretty well, but if I did this again, I think I would have caught those sooner.
That's a good point. Since we're on this topic, Daniela asked a really good question. Use the word champion, right? What is the characteristic of a champion and how do you find that person?
That's a really good question, especially when you're doing B2B sales, especially when you're doing B2B enterprise sales, because you really need to have a champion that lets you navigate these really intense and complicated corporate structures that often come with their own bureaucracy and politics and things like that. How do you find a good champion? It's sales, right? I mean, you fill up the top of your funnel and you work them through your sales process. You want to have a sales engine. A lot of times, and as you grow and you sell more, you'll realize that, people with this particular title and this particular level of seniority happen to be the people who, have the incentives to bring BlastPoint in, and even if they might not be the end users, right? So we use these champions as a way to navigate these corporate structures, have introductions to the relevant people, and sort of orchestrate everything. Our goal is to make our champions look like heroes, and that's basically it. Really, an important thing is building really great relationships with your champions, because when they leave one place, they're going to go somewhere else and they're going to bring you with them. And so Initially, champions typically show up. You find them during the sales process, whether it's going to a conference and taking people to dinner, or just having, building rapport during sales conversations and things like that. And you'll find champions, like you'll know, it'll be obvious, right? You're going to talk to people who are just like, yeah, not interesting. Some people are just like, that's nice. And some people who are really enthusiastic about what you do and take a big chunk of their time to actually bring you in because they believe in what the value that you bring, and they typically are visionary, at least in my experience. So yeah, I'll stop there.
No, that's really helpful. And I had a friend, well, I have a friend, we're still friends, who would actually, after phone calls, you'd have like little small talk, oh yeah, my kid has a hockey game or whatever they say. And he would literally write down, log in, oh, this kid, their kid's graduation's coming up. And then the next time they would talk, it's like, happy graduation or congrats again. And he's doing really well. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, CRM stands for customer relationship management, relationship.
Yeah, but I don't typically think about writing their dog's name in it. He would.
Yeah, people do that. I honestly could be doing a better job at that, but it is really powerful. And I don't, some people might think it's inauthentic, but I don't think so. And when you sell and as a founder, you meet so many people, and why not help yourself be a little, just build better relationships.
Yeah, and when you're selling, you're meeting a lot of people. That's a lot of information to track just in your brain. That's why we write things down. We write our to-dos down. So it's just considered a cheat sheet for relationships.
For sure.
Okay, so we had a really good question. And with entrepreneurs, this is always one. It's about spending money. How do you know how much to spend on developing a prototype? How do you determine that? How did you determine? Give me an example for you. And this is for each of you.
The bottom line is the cash flow. Never run out of money. Even like most cases at the early stage, entrepreneurs themselves, they take money out of their own pockets. But the bottom line is, never run out of money. Yeah, so at our early stage, our early team members, we all worked for free. And then we basically tried to find as many free resources as we could to build the prototype. And as a matter of fact, it shouldn't take you a lot of time and resources to build a prototype because it should be a very, very simplified version to represent what you are envisioning. Yeah. If it's costly, it might be wrong. Yeah.
JJ, by the way, I think we're hearing your Slack notifications.
Let me actually log off.
Yeah, hard agree on everything JJ said. For me particularly, I'm a technical co-founder. I got my bachelor's and master's degrees in engineering at CMU. But I always knew that I wanted to be a tech entrepreneur. That was never a question. I became an engineer so that I wouldn't have to pay other people to build my ideas. So there's a whole probably discussion to be had around technical and non-technical founders and things like that. That said, again, same company in a Sanders building had a non-technical founder that sold like, a decent chunk of money on PowerPoint slides only. So I really want to highlight what JJ said around building a prototype should not be a time-consuming and resource-intensive process. It should be quick. It should be highly iterative. And if you don't have the skills to build a prototype yourself, make a PowerPoint slide and find someone to commit to saying, I will pay you X amount of money if you build me that. And we've done some things that way. There are companies that are successful that are in Pittsburgh who have literally gotten their start that way. So it's a good question, but my response would be that it's like, at the same time, it's like the wrong question because you just shouldn't be spending resources and money on prototyping. I mean, once you get big and then you have engineers and stuff, it's a different story. But if we're talking early entrepreneurship, then everything I said.
Got it. Now, I want to pull something that you said. You're right. You have that technical background, but I know some of the entrepreneurs in here want to build something their company is based on something technical or a platform, but they don't have that themselves. And so what do you recommend they look for in finding someone? Should they be hiring an actual full-time person to be part of the starting team, contract it? What do you recommend they should do? And what to look out for?
So again, first-time entrepreneur, I can only speak to my experience. I would highly recommend get a technical founder, get a co-founder. I do think it becomes so much easier, and I haven't had to do this because up until now, I either worked on the code base myself or was big enough to have employees to work on the code base. Early days when we were in Alpha Lab, I know that we had a lot of sister companies in that cohort that did outsource development. And again, I can't speak to their experience. I just remember a lot of like moaning and groaning and that just being sort of difficult. So get a technical co-founder. If you don't have anything built yet and you're a tech business, then they should probably be a co-founder rather than a contractor or an employee. Although, I'm sure people have done it those ways too, and it worked out fine in some cases. So it's not like there's one right or wrong answer. I'll just highlight again that you can get money without building anything, and that's what you should do.
That's the ideal. That's the dream, right? All right. So I forgot what my next question was going to be. Oh yeah, I wanted to ask Zach's question actually. So how did you figure out from the idea stage that you were ready to actually start building something? What was that for you, Tomer?
So just a little bit of history for BlastPoint specifically. My co-founder, Allison Alvarez, and I met at Tepper at CMU when we were doing my master's, her MBA, and we entered the McGinnis Venture competition. We actually built a prototype just to showcase that we could for that competition. Even though we had the value prop in the market and all of that completely wrong, people were impressed by the fact that we were able to build a very simple but end-to-end working prototype. That's like a unique case where we impressed a bunch of judges by having a working prototype where no one else did, where, everything else about the value proposition was wrong. So I don't know if I put it on a PowerPoint slide, that would have gotten me first place. But after that, both of us stayed in our day jobs and worked nights and weekends, interviewing literally hundreds of people that I found on Reddit and through our networks to just get a sense of whether there's a market for what we're building. And once we got validation from that, and then started talking to folks like Ascender and Alpha Lab and Innovation Works, and presented our findings and gotten some investment. So that's another thing you can do: get investment once you've validated your idea sufficiently. That's also a form of validation, maybe not as great as revenue, but still a form of validation that made us be like, well, I quit my day job and once we got into Alpha Lab and got investment from Alpha Lab and started doing this so this goes beyond the prototype, right? Because we then incorporated, but sort of the same idea. So it's really all about validation, and there are multiple forms of validation. Best one is usage or money. Otherwise, it's investment. People saying, "Whoa, that's really cool." It's not great validation.
Fair enough. What about you, JJ?
Yeah, I would say in our case, we started from the business side. That meaning, we talked with quite a few, industry experts and potential customers. The moment we decided to build,
how many customers would you say you talked to? Potential customers?
Like we have been talking with them like continuously. At the early stage, I would say I talked with at least 10 experts. They're either training consultants or scientists like in different industries at the early stage. And managers, of course, I would say managers over 20, 30, I forgot, but many. And then in our case, the reason we decide to, launch the new version of product or add certain new features to our product, that's all based on our customers' needs. For instance, last year, pandemic happened, a lot of companies, they need to pivot, right? So in our case, we lost some deals due to pandemic. So we were trying to pivot, on the business side. And it turns out partnership with, existing training companies or LMS providers, that's a valid route because their old business model is not scalable. In our case, we can offer API products for them to integrate. But at that time, we didn't have, let's say, an X API, which is a typical form of API that most learning management system support. So in that case, we reached out to one of our partners, now partner. At that time, they said, if you guys could, wrap your AI component in the form of X API, we could potentially integrate. So we delivered, even though that's like 1 or 2 months after that. And then they delivered their promise as well. They integrated our X API. They started bringing us to their customers. So I would say the customers will always tell you, what they ask if you keep connecting with them and keep pushing to the right direction you are envisioning. Yeah.
Okay, great. Now talking about that pilot testing, pulling from there, how do you, how long is your pilot testing kind of time frame, especially early on? And then also, how do you convince some, especially when it comes to corporations or enterprise, how do you convince someone to pilot test your product?
Yeah, so in our case, we focus on corporate training, right? So in our case, we try to limit it within a month. And typically with a group of 10 to 20 people. And then the end goal for a pilot test is to convert them to annual subscription or, other form of larger deals. So in that case, before we start the pilot test, we would, align our expectations. Let's say if we hit certain milestones or results, we are then going to convert. So everybody, both parties are clear on what the triggers are. And then we would typically deliver more than what we promised just to push the sales momentum further, and offer discount as well. Yeah, so that's how we are doing it.
Nice. Tomer.
Yeah, so our pilots are a little bit different just because we provide insights and then it takes some time to track those, to activate those insights and then get results back. So our pilots are usually 6-ish months. At this point, it's not so much that I get people to pilot test my service. It's more that if a customer is not buying a full subscription, I will offer a pilot. That's sort of a smaller commitment, but enough skin in the game that I think it would be. I think it'll lead to a full engagement, a full subscription. Thinking about pilots and making sure that they're successful, I think you really have to be very methodical and structured in the way that you align with the customer on what, how do you measure success, so that you can, and making sure that you can measure that success so you can come back later and say, see, we did.
Is that your diplomatic way of saying that people are difficult to work with? And so you have to make sure you're aligned?
No, not at all. I just think, if you don't define those metrics, and if you don't have a structure for your pilot tests, it's just too easy for things to fall through the cracks and stay vague. It's not that I dictate how we're going to measure success, right? I'm going to ask the customer, what does a successful pilot look like to you? And then I can make sure that my team delivers on that. We do a lot of the same things, like go a little bit extra and delight our customers to make them feel like it was more than successful. But yeah, I do think that deciding on KPIs and tracking those KPIs, and I mean, obviously you want to do a good job and actually hit those KPIs, but if you don't, then you have other problems.
And that approach of having them speak first is always helpful, because you hear where they're at and then you adjust your answer accordingly. And I'm sure, especially if they have lower expectations than you, then like you said, you get to over deliver at the end. Under promise, over deliver is a good kind of mantra there.
100%.
Fabulous. Okay, so there was a quick question I want to answer, because I am hearing more of entrepreneurs going to things like Reddit. Sometimes they try it through social media to gather some feedback or survey through these platforms. And Tomer, you went through that, and I'm not sure if JJ you did as well, but is there give 2 tips in getting those replies and quality replies?
Do you mean from the perspective of actually engaging with people to sort of experiment with and test things on? Yeah, it's very much like sales. I think I've given a talk actually to Sender before about early stage sales and how they're so closely integrated with customer discovery. So again, you need to treat this like a sales process where you have a top of the funnel, because you're going to reach out to a bunch of people and not all of them are going to reply to you. So it's a numbers game. You also want to make sure that you are segmenting your testers or your test users, and make sure that you understand this group of people who are have this title and come from this industry react one way, while a different segment might react a different way. I've seen people do things like, here, I'll give you a $25 gift card for to test our thing for half an hour.
That's what I was asking. Are you paying up?
I know people do that. We haven't done that. I don't think it's invalid. I'm not saying I'll never do it. This is, I feel like there's people want to be involved in your thing. You're starting a new thing. It's exciting. People just want to be involved. Like life. No, I'm not going to say that. But life can get mundane sometimes. So when someone says, oh, I'm looking for so-and-so people, so be targeted in your ask, right? And someone's going to be like, oh, that's me. I can provide value. I can be involved in this thing that most people don't get to. So what I'm saying is, you would be surprised how many people will actually respond yes to doing this without you paying them. I can see later stage at scale wanting to pay people. I have concerns about that inherently biasing the feedback that you're going to get.
That makes sense. Which sometimes I like the approach of, you get entered to win. So you're not paying, you're not guaranteed. So you don't know the incentive might be that they just want to help, or they want to get that $50 Amazon gift card, but they know their probability is low. So JJ, for you, I'm sure with gathering feedback, everyone's got an opinion, especially me. So how do you manage hearing, hey, how about this feature? How about do this other, and deciding, is this something really worth implementing for TalkMeUp?
That's a great question. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially at the early stage, they struggle to balance between finding the valuable feedback and filtering the noise and everything. So I would say, find the persona of the person you're talking with, whether that person represents, let's say in our case, a typical end user, or a manager, or a business owner, because the positions they are in would affect their perspectives. So don't assume everything by granted. Like, ask more questions, like ask more whys, right? They say, oh, I want this feature. Like, why? Perhaps they're only telling you the symptoms, not the cause of the issue. So I would always ask why. That's why in our case, I would always prefer interviews to having surveys. Yeah.
What's Tomer, for you, what's one question you always ask or something you want to learn when you're user testing?
So I haven't done this in a long time, right? Because I have a head of product now and stuff like that. So, you know, the way I approach this, I'll answer a different question that I think will satisfy what you're looking for. The way I approached this was, you know, especially early on, getting our first few handfuls of customers, was all about customer discovery and really just understanding, you know, tell me about your day. Like, what does a typical day look like for you? If you know, what's keeping you up at night? Maybe I am answering your question. Things like, you know, are there any questions I haven't asked you? And just really trying to understand, you know, very broadly, what is this person's work life about? Trying to surface those pain points. You know, if you had no limit and imagination was the limit, what would solve your problem if you could just, you know, snap your fingers? So things like that. And then if the answers they're giving me make it sound like I can solve their problems, I can always be like, well, you know, by the way, sneaky.
Very sneaky. Okay. So let me see. I had another question here. You know, there are actually 3 questions that related to the relationship within teams between technical and non-technical people. And so I wanted to hear a little bit, whether it's with contractors, full-time, whatever, but you're ultimately creating this product with people with different backgrounds. And so how do you, if you're technical, how do you fully really explain to another person and make sure milestones are reached to someone who's non, and then the inverse that you've seen with people you've worked with? Either of you can go.
Sure. I think that's a really good question. It's not something that was on my radar when I started this company, but it's very much on my radar now. I think it's really important to hone your skills, like maybe use TalkMeUp, to hone your skills as a communicator. You know, when we grew our team, we literally hired people who had both, you know, strong technical background and the soft skills needed to be that liaison between the business side of the team and external non-technical people and the people who are developing the actual product. So being an effective communicator is really important. It's something that I think is a really big strength of mine. I think I'm specifically good at simplifying what I'm trying to say, but also have that technical know-how to communicate that. And I look to hire more people like that for roles that, you know, that do what we're talking about, right? So UX, head of product are all people who have the soft skills and maybe not a super deep technical background, but enough to be dangerous. The other thing that I would say is, as you grow and you know you have a team where you do need to have that kind of communication between technical and non-technical people, you need to have structure and process early on. When, you know, again, it was both my first time as well as Allison's first time founding a company. Things were sort of more ad hoc, and you know, lines got crossed, and there were miscommunications between, you know, this developer was hearing the experience of this person on the team that talked with one customer, but a different, you know, developer had, you know, was talking to another person and heard a different experience. So priorities and you know, mixed signals, you know, got all mixed up. It's really important that there's a clear hierarchy of, you know, if I'm going to deliver business feedback to my engineers, it's going to have to be done through someone who has both a technical, you know, maybe it's just an account management with no technical skills, communicating with head of product that is sort of the liaison, has both the soft skills and the technical skills, then communicating that to the engineers. And when we communicate that to the engineers, we communicate that to the head of the engineers so that he can distribute the work accordingly, and we don't get, you know, broken telephone or, you know, just blind spots where this developer is working on this, but their manager doesn't know. that's happened before.
Oh, yeah, that's so true. JJ,
Yeah.
In the same kind of thought of managing expectations or sharing information back and forth, just being on the same page. When it came to having your first people testing your product, how did you manage their expectations? It's a work in progress. Maybe yours was a very pretty prototype, but most prototypes aren't. How do you manage that expectation, not lose them?
So in our case, I always do the live product demo during the first meetings. They already have the first impression of what we can do. So during the actual implementation, so whether it's actual adoption or a pilot run, typically last year, we would then add more support or functionality or customization to it. Also, they understand we're a startup, and especially we're doing offering SaaS product for enterprise customers, right? They have their own standards, whether it's data security or supporting integration functionalities with their existing systems. So we're definitely can't compete with big public software companies in terms of that. But in our case, we highlight our key value proposition, which is the AI analyzer, video-based analyzer. So in that case, we during the pilot phase or pilot run phase, we really focus on what we are good at, and then make sure that we show them we have the capacity to integrate into what they already have, so that they have a seamless experience going forward working with us. So that's what we do right now, and hopefully going forward with more support from VCs down the road, we can build our own bigger teams to support the surrounding features and capacities around it. But yeah, you do what you can, I would say.
We need that on a shirt. You do what you can. Hashtag entrepreneur life. So we had some kind of general questions that I would like to ask. I thought were very interesting. And Tomer, you, especially with pivoting from restaurant to, a lot of your customers are utility companies, is what's your strategy for entering a new market that you didn't anticipate?
Yeah, that's a good question too. Good job on these questions, by the way. So that's really hard, actually. We went from focusing on nonprofits as our primary market to franchises. We even had like a quick detour into political campaigns, promptly turned around and did a U-turn there, until we found utilities. And now that we've got traction with utilities and automakers, we are looking to expand into the insurance space and into the financial services space and things like that. I think we'll probably go back to retail one day, now that we're all grown up. But
oh, wait, can I interrupt? Because I have a specific question in what you're saying. Sometimes some businesses, either they're told or they think, they're failing because they ultimately are not in the right market. But they don't realize it. It just goes, oh, my business just sucks. And then, close down or keep pushing until they run totally out of money. And so how did you, or who told you you're in the wrong market, you should try a different one?
It all goes back to like validation through sales. I found myself getting initial traction with maybe it's a little more than that. Found myself, getting traction in the franchising space, but also noticed that the customers, no offense to any franchising, people, I think it's a great industry, but for the amount of money that they were willing to pay us, they were needy. So we were actually recording how much time we spent, and we were losing money. And B, it was difficult to compete with the other alternatives. We thought that was a greener space for the offering that we were providing than it was. So we did ask all of those customers, why are you with us rather than one of the competitors, and kind of realize a customer intelligence that is something that we provided that other competitors didn't, because this was really a site selection play. That was something that we took out of there and kind of blew up into a whole new market, value proposition, even though it was still very similar to what we were doing, was just a different take on it. So, I knew because things were not working out and I had to do something to fix it. So you'll know, or at least, before you shut down your business, just do the analysis. But we had taken investment. I wasn't going to call it quits. We had to figure something out. And we did have, you're always having as a founder exploratory conversations, even if it's just opportunistically, to hear other takes on what you're doing from other people in other industries. Once you have some idea, you should run an analysis. And what's crazy, this is something I realized this year, is that a lot of those MBA type, in an Excel spreadsheet analyses, like the 5 forces and things like that seem, to me as a technical person, they seem like they're not really work, but man, they work. They produce so much insights, they make things so clear. So really ranking all the different potential verticals that you can brainstorm in terms of the numerically, what kind of value you can give them, competition in that vertical, sales cycle length that you estimate in those verticals, total them up and rank them to sort of have some idea of where you should invest your resources first. Then you go to conferences, you learn more, you do customer discovery in that industry, and sort of go back to basics, build a prototype of, full circle, you see, build a prototype and really test out your value proposition and figure out how to change it so that it fits this new vertical that you're in, because it's not going to be exactly the same from vertical to vertical. And one of the biggest things, even if you're selling the exact same product, the positioning and the problems that they're going to have and that you're going to need to position yourself around are going to be different.
That's really good advice. And I also wanted to highlight something you said earlier in tracking your time if possible when it comes to a client, because as an entrepreneur, someone's offering you some money, you go, oh my goodness, that's great. But then if you actually do the math, you're losing money in your time. Time is money, even if you're not paying yourself just yet. So you don't want to create that precedent, because even if you make this exception now, it must be really worth it if you're learning a lot. But if you make the exception now, then you're going to be attracting more customers like that. And then you're just going to be putting yourself in a hole. So I want to end with this last question. We have about 4 minutes left. And this one's a tough one. And good luck in answering this one. But someone asked, how do you create a business when you don't know your next steps?
Nadila, can you repeat that?
How do you create a business when you don't know your next steps? So when you're an entrepreneur, especially a first-time entrepreneur, maybe you don't even know what direction you're headed, where you're supposed to do next. What do you do in this world of vague?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've been talking a lot, so maybe JJ can go.
You'll both answer.
Yeah, ambiguity is our daily friend. I will say it's the, if I use an analysis that will be analogy, that'll be the art of war versus the strategy of tactics. I would refer next steps as the tactics you need to take. But on your mind as an entrepreneur, you should always have a clear vision of what you're trying to build. And then you think from the future and look back, and you will know what you need to do next. If you have a very blurry vision to start with, don't do it because you're not going to know where you're going, right? So at least have a clear mind on the direction you're going, and then the answers will come to you in terms of what you need to do to achieve that.
Yeah, working backwards for sure. Sometimes entrepreneurs get stuck on the day-to-day, and then you wake up a few months and you realize, wait, what was this all for? So even dedicating some time on that large strategic thinking will really save you time in the long run. Tomer, what about you?
Yeah, that's sort of like the existential thing that all the entrepreneurs deal with, because you'll never have clarity around next steps. And there have been so many times that I felt like, man, I just need an adult to tell me what to do, but they're never there because they don't exist. You're the expert in what you do. So sort of echoing what JJ said, being an entrepreneur is operating, unless you're doing a lifestyle business with a proven business model. If you're building, an exponential growth type of startup where you're inventing a new technology or a new business model, you're going to operate in extreme conditions of uncertainty. You've got to get used to that. Highly recommend the Lean Startup. I read it before I started BlastPoint. I read it and now, very different levels of empathy that I have for that book now. So it's worth revisiting. But that book is all about learning, maximizing your learning and measuring progress under extreme conditions of uncertainty. And just read that book.
Thank you. These are great advice in this world of the entrepreneur. So thank you to the both of you for coming. It's always great to hang out with the two of you. And thank you all entrepreneurs to come in, who came in for the event. And I hope you got something out of today. And both folks have great expertise and experience and would be happy to connect with you on LinkedIn or otherwise. So Tomer, JJ, you're great. Good luck. Keep me posted and we'll bring you back. And everyone else, see you again.